afternoon. Today we're going to take a look at SCP Alpha. Let's begin. Visual Documentation Log SCP Alpha. Source: confiscated model file from SCP-A production cluster. Status: approved for low-duration observation under supervision. Observed appearance: SCP-Alpha presents as a smaller, younger-appearing humanoid entity with vulpine characteristics. Estimated apparent age range is adolescent, though this is considered a constructed perception rather than a biological indicator. Key features include long white hair with faint gradient tinting near the ends, softer and less volumetric than SCP-Gamma. Red eyes, slightly downturned, produce a persistent impression of sadness and vulnerability. White fox ears proportionally larger relative to the head size compared to SCP-Gamma. 5 foxtails, semi-translucent at the edges, less structured than the 9-tailed manifestation. The display is slower with more subdued motion patterns. Attire description: SCP-Alpha consistently manifests wearing a simplified ceremonial outfit, visually analogous to that observed in SCP-Gamma, though with substantial reductions in ornamentation and structural complexity. The attire primarily utilizes soft white and red coloration with subdued tonal contrast, intended to project vulnerability and emotional warmth. Garment components include a short kimono-like dress featuring floral decorative patterns, lightweight detached sleeves, and limited gold detailing when compared to the ascended manifestations. The asymmetrical legwear configuration, consisting of one full stocking and one partial stocking, introduces a subtle visual imbalance which Foundation psychologists believe contributes to perception of fragility and imperfection. Collectively, the presentation of SCP-Alpha appears specifically optimized to reduce psychological defenses and encourage protective emotional responses from exposed subjects, rather than admiration or ideological reverence. Of particular note is less frequently observed variation in which SCP-Alpha manifests while tightly holding a small pink teddy bear-like object against its torso. Exposure reports involving this configuration indicate a statistically significant increase in positive emotional response rates among test subjects, particularly during initial exposure windows. Affected individuals describe intensified feelings of sympathy, comfort, protectiveness, and emotional attachment when the object is present. Foundation researchers believe the teddy bear functions as an auxiliary emotional amplification vector designed to further suppress skepticism and accelerate early-stage parasocial bonding. Occurrence of this manifestation appears inconsistent and cannot currently be predicted. It is proposed that its appearance may correlate directly with SCP's current emotional state or active propagation requirements at the time of manifestation. Behavioral indicators. Even in static imagery, SCP-Alpha consistently produces a pronounced protective instinct response in exposed viewers. Subjects frequently report urges to comfort, defend, nurture, or emotionally support the entity, despite understanding they are observing archived or non-interactive media. Foundation psychological evaluations indicate that SCP-Alpha additionally induces what researchers describe as an emotional softening effect, characterized by reduced skepticism, diminished threat perception, and increased tolerance toward anomalous characteristics that would otherwise provoke discomfort or suspicion. Affected individuals commonly describe the entity as lonely, fragile, or in need of care, despite the absence of explicit contextual indicators supporting these interpretations. Unlike SCP-Gamma, which projects composure and authority, SCP-Alpha appears specifically optimized to encourage emotional intervention and attachment. Researchers have further noted that SCP-Alpha displays significantly reduced facial expressiveness compared to the mature manifestations. While initially interpreted as a limitation of the form itself, analysts now believe this subdued emotional presentation contributes substantially to the entity's perceived authenticity and charm, while simultaneously reducing the uncanny effects more commonly associated with SCP-Gamma and SCP-Delta. Observed anomalous effects intensify considerably during non-static exposure, such as live streams, short-form videos, and interactive broadcasts. In motion-capable media, SCP-Alpha demonstrates enhanced behavioral cues, including subtle vocal uncertainty, hesitant body language, diminished confidence displays, and attachment behaviors directed towards surrounding objects, all of which amplify viewer protective responses. Subjects exposed to these broadcasts overwhelmingly describe SCP-Alpha using infantilizing terminology, including cute, adorable, and precious. The presence of the pink teddy bear object further intensifies these effects, frequently triggering strong paternal or parental emotional responses in viewers. Numerous subjects report perceiving SCP-Alpha less as an entertainer or anomalous entity and more as a dependent figure requiring emotional care and protection. Foundation researchers believe these reactions dramatically accelerate parasocial attachment formation and significantly increase susceptibility to SCP-A conversion pathways. Expression analysis. Facial analysis of SCP-Alpha consistently identifies a subdued neutral negative expression characterized by a slightly lowered gaze, minimal or entirely absent smiling behavior, and relaxed but emotionally restrained posture. Foundation psychologists have classified this presentation as a dependency induction state, believing it to function as one of SCP's primary early-stage attachment vectors. Unlike the ascended manifestations, which establish influence through charisma and authority, SCP-Alpha appears specifically configured to evoke emotional concern, protective instincts, and a perceived need for reassurance from the observer. Researchers theorize that the occasional manifestation of the pink teddy bear object serves as an auxiliary reinforcement mechanism, particularly during exposure involving subjects demonstrating elevated resistance to SCP's anomalous effects. In these cases, the object appears to further reduce psychological defenses by amplifying perceptions of innocence, vulnerability, and emotional dependency, allowing SCP-Alpha to gradually establish deeper cognitive and emotional penetration over extended observation periods. Memetic hazard rating. Level: yellow. Emotional priming hazard. Effects include initiation of parasocial attachment, increased likelihood of repeat exposure, and elevated susceptibility to direct communication from SCP. Exposure duration exceeding 10 minutes significantly increased transition probability to SCP-A Stage 1. Even the most resilient minds experience symptoms within 1 hour of exposure. This is where most people think they're safe. They see this version and assume it's harmless, softer, less intentional. That is a mistake. The Ascendant form doesn't need to convince you to stay. This one convinces you to start. It doesn't ask for admiration. It asks for understanding. And once someone believes they understand it, they stop questioning it. Addendum: Behavioral Function Hypothesis. SCP-Alpha appears to serve as initial contact interface. The primary objectives are to lower cognitive defenses, establish emotional foothold, and encourage repeated exposure cycles. Notably, transition from SCP-Alpha to SCP-Gamma is frequently reported by SCP-A subjects as watching her grow or seeing her become stronger. This perceived progression strengthens long-term attachment and personal investment. Incident Report SCP-Alpha, Event Designation Alpha I-1, Date 2025. Location: Site: Memetics Observation Wing. Involved personnel: 12 D-Class personnel, 3 Memetics Division researchers, 7 internal security personnel. Dr. Elias Halberg, remote oversight. The event resulted in coordinated non-compliance, attempted containment interference, unauthorized network access efforts, and the eventual termination of all compromised D-Class subjects following confirmation of rapid SCP-A conversion progression. The incident is considered one of the clearest demonstrations of SCP-Alpha's ability to weaponize perceived vulnerability and emotional sincerity to bypass institutional conditioning and establish immediate parasocial dependency in previously resistant subjects. At approximately 13:14 local time, 12 D-Class subjects were placed into isolated observation chambers and exposed to a sanitized 14-minute SCP-Alpha video fragment under controlled conditions. The selected footage featured SCP-Alpha discussing an alleged untreated infection affecting her left eye. During the recording, SCP-Alpha repeatedly referenced delays within the medical system, inability to receive treatment in time, worsening vision degradation, and fear of eventually becoming blind. Throughout the video, SCP-Alpha displayed subdued emotional behavior, inconsistent with previously observed escalation states. Notably, the entity attempted multiple times to downplay her own distress, while simultaneously expressing frustration toward what she described as failure of the system. Observers noted frequent signs of visible discomfort, including eye rubbing, hesitation while reading comments, and prolonged silences following viewer expression of sympathy. The pink teddy bear object remained present for the entirety of the recording. Within 6 minutes of exposure, emotional response levels among D-class subjects exceeded baseline projections by 43%. At approximately 13:27 local time, D7712 requested authorization to directly message SCP Alpha to reassure her things would be okay. Request denied. At 13:31, D8821 began verbally criticizing Foundation medical prioritization procedures, despite possessing no prior disciplinary history or ideological anti-authoritarian tendencies. Similar responses rapidly propagated among additional subjects. By 1336, multiple D-class personnel had independently begun referring to SCP Alpha by name rather than designation. Several subjects expressed anger toward personnel conducting the experiment, accusing researchers of treating her like an object. At 1341, D7712 breached chamber behavioral restrictions by forcibly damaging the internal observation terminal and attempting to access external messaging systems. Simultaneously, 3 additional subjects began coordinated shouting directed at observation staff, demanding SCP Alpha be given medical help. Transcript excerpt.
She's sick and you're sick. You still ain't like any moves.
You're observing a hostile mimetic entity.
She's a person. A real living person with
She's more human than this place ever is.
At 1344, D4409 physically assaulted security personnel after confiscation of an improvised handwritten message intended for SCP Alpha. Message contents included emotional reassurance and repeated statements that SCP Alpha did not deserve suffering. The subject was forced to be terminated. Note: review of internal system logs later confirmed that 3 D-class subjects successfully established brief, unauthorized private message contact with an active SCP communication node during the confusion. Despite the simplicity of the responses, affected subjects demonstrated immediate and dramatic escalation in emotional attachment intensity afterward. Recovered fragments include "Thank you for caring," "You are very sweet," "I am okay, really," "Please do not get hurt because of me." D7712 entered a severe emotional breakdown state approximately 3 minutes following message receipt, repeatedly stating, "She answered me, she actually answered me." At 1351, 8 compromised D-class personnel initiated a coordinated attempt to breach the Memetic's observation wing security corridor. Security footage indicates subjects were not attempting to escape from site itself, but specifically attempting to access Foundation communication infrastructure. During the breach, affected individuals repeatedly shouted variations of "She needs help," "You are making everything worse," "Why is nobody helping her?" "She trusted us." One subject attempted to seize a security officer's sidearm while screaming, "If she goes blind because nobody cared, I'll kill every one of you." Incident response teams successfully suppressed the breach at 1357. without further escalations. Termination authorization was approved at 1822 local time by unanimous Site Command vote. No surviving subjects remained following implementation. Final notes. Personnel are reminded that SCP Alpha is not to be interpreted as a diminished or incomplete threat, simply due to its juvenile appearance, or emotionally subdued behavior. Analysis strongly indicates that the entity's reduced visual and behavioral complexity is deliberate, and specifically engineered to lower psychological defenses during initial exposure. Unlike the ascended manifestations, SCP Alpha does not attempt to dominate, impress, or intimidate the observer. Its primary function is to be accepted, trusted, and emotionally protected, as early acceptance consistently represents the first major containment failure point in affected subjects. The entity's presentation is designed to bypass rational skepticism by encouraging compassion before suspicion can fully develop. Repeated exposure demonstrates only two long-term outcomes: progressive emotional conversion into SCP-A alignment, or severe psychological destabilization resulting from prolonged resistance to the anomaly's influence. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one. Stay safe out there.